right, welcome back. So we are in the book of Daniel right here. If you've been following along, there's a comparison between what the scripture actually says about the coming of the Lord. And I got, what, five different books up here. And this is the 7-year treaty, the last year, or the last week of the end of the age. All right, so let's go to Daniel chapter 2. And starting in verse 24 onward. Now, this Daniel chapter 2 is going to be, you know, it's going to be good stuff. Well, all the Bible's good. But I might introduce some things that you haven't heard before. And put on your thinking caps and let's get to it. So Nebuchadnezzar has a dream, right? And we covered it in the first video with the intro as far as the statue. All right, so I think it's 24 it was, where it's the interpretation of the dream. God reveals Nebuchadnezzar's dream. So here we go. Then Daniel went to his house and made the matter known to Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, and his companions. Dropping down to verse 20. Then answered said, Blessed be the name of the God forever and ever, to whom belong wisdom and might. He changes times and seasons. He removes kings and set up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. Realize how it says God's the one that changes times and seasons. And we're going to read later on in Daniel where the conquering king, the Antichrist, the man of lawlessness, he's going to try to change times and seasons. You see, this guy is not original. He's just trying to be like God. He is Satan incarnate. All right, so the Lord, he reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells within him. So Daniel gives a prayer of adoration, for the Lord has revealed the meaning of this dream to Daniel. All right, so Daniel says, there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days. Latter days is where you get those boys, the Latter-day Saints, right? Now, although they are a cult, their name is accurate because we live in the latter days. We live in what John calls the last hour. The close of the age is how the Lord describes it. The end times. So this is what will be in the latter days. So if this was important to them, how much more it is to us, right? Your dream and the visions of your head as you lay in bed are these. And then he tells him the dream. To you, O king, where are we? Let's go to 30. But for me the mystery has been revealed, not to me, not because of my any wisdom that I have, more than all the living, but in order that the interpretation may be made known to the king, and that you may know the thoughts of your mind. You saw, O king, and behold, a great image. This image, mighty and of exceeding brightness, stood before you, and its appearance was frightening. So I showed the statue in the previous video. This is where Daniel describes the dream, which the head is an image of gold, and then the chest and arms of silver, and its middle and thighs is of bronze, and the legs of iron. His feet partly iron and partly clay. He's talking about these kingdoms, and this is their interpretation when Daniel begins to explain this was the dream. Now we will tell the king his interpretation. You, O king, the king of kings, to whom the God of heavens have given the kingdom, the power, and the might, and the glory, and into whose hand he has given, wherever they dwell, the children of man, the beasts of the field, and the birds of the heavens, making you rule over them all. You are the head of gold. Now, Nebuchadnezzar is like in the character of the Antichrist. Well, both. One, Christ, for when Jesus Christ sets up his kingdom, he's going to be over all things. Antichrist, for when the Antichrist comes, he's going to be over all things. Just as Nimrod was in the book of Genesis. But let's continue. Another kingdom inferior to you shall arise after you. Isn't it interesting that even though the kingdom's inferior, it's still going to overthrow you? Because the Lord chooses who's king and who's in authority, and who's governing the children of men. And yet a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth. And that should be a fourth kingdom, strong as iron, because iron breaks to pieces and shatters all things. And like iron that crushes, it shall break and crush all these things. And we later learned that iron is Rome. Before was Greece, and before that was Medo-Persia, and Babylon was the head of gold. And then in verse 40 it says, and there shall be a fourth kingdom strong as iron, because iron breaks as... Alright, we read that one. And as you saw, the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, it shall be a divided kingdom. So it's talking about a divided kingdom. 10 toes. But some of the firmness of the iron shall be in it, just as you saw iron mixed with soft clay. And as the toes of the feet were partly iron and partly clay, so shall the kingdom be, partly strong and partly weak. So this is the interpretation of this kingdom, this final kingdom with 10 toes. The kingdom shall be partly strong, but it will also be partly weak. So it gives you an overview of the strength of this kingdom, but then it gives you another understanding of the iron and the clay. In verse 43 it says, as you saw iron mixed with soft clay, so they will mix with one another in marriage, but they will not hold together, just as iron does not mix with clay. That's interesting. Let's see if we can get this in a... let's see what the NLT says. 243. The mixture of iron and clay also shows that these kingdoms will try to strengthen themselves by forming alliances with each other through intermarriage. But they will not hold together, just iron and clay do not mix. Let's see what the King James has to say. Whereas the iron is mixed with clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave to one another, just as iron is not mixed with clay. All right, so I'm keep coming at this with different translations, because so originally when I read this back in the day, it was mixture of the seed of men and a they. So the way I learned this from Chuck Mishler is that the they must not be the seed of men if they're mixing with the seed of men, which goes back to Genesis chapter 6 with the fallen ones, when they saw the daughters of men and took wives as they chose, and that's where the Nephilim, the men of renown, came from, the giants, the Goliaths. So there is a belief that there will be a return of the Nephilim, and this is a reference to it, as far as the seed of men mixing in with a different seed, which is not human, to create a hybrid race. But that's just a view that I present to you, which this is one of those things where I take, I'm like, that's interesting. But I file it in the back of my mind. That way, if Nephilim start popping out of the sky and landing on the White House, and people are calling them UFOs, I'm like, no. This is Daniel chapter 2 verse 43, man. This is the they, as far as Genesis 6 coming back at us all over again. It may be that, it may not be. Don't know. We just gotta let it all play out and see if we're around to witness all these things. So after this, the millennium kingdom comes and the Lord reigns. So that is the layout of the 10 toes. So now let's go to Daniel chapter 7 verse 14. All right, the Son of Man presented. I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And there was given him dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all people, nations, and language should serve him. This dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. Where am I? Oh, okay. I'm like, wait a minute. Because I call this guy the beast. This talking about Jesus. So I need to be in 7:19, not 7:14. All right. I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit in the midst of my body, and the visions of my head troubled me. I came near unto one of them that stood by and asked him the truth of all this. So he told me and made me know the interpretation of the things. So that's the thing when it comes to Bible interpretation. Most of the Bible has already interpreted itself. And there's other things where the Bible is silent on, which is why we should follow the mandate of the Scriptures. Follow the interpretation of the Scriptures. Now, with other things, like previously when I was just talking about Daniel 2:43, and some allude to that referring to Nephilim, possible UFOs, hyperdimensional beings, Genesis 6 2.0. All right, that's a conjecture. Just make it known. Make it known that it's an opinion, but that's not what the Scripture is literally teaching. Scripture is silent on that, except what it explained that it's about the strength and weaknesses of this final kingdom. Then it goes on talking about personal pronouns and seed of man and they, but we leave it at that. Though we have our conjectures, but presented as conjectures. But when the Bible interprets the Bible, we gotta go on the interpretation. For no prophecy of Scripture is given by private interpretation, as it says in I think 2 Timothy. So Daniel 7:17, these great beasts. Rewind. I came here unto one of them that stood. Okay, you get interpretation. Okay, these great beasts, which are four kings which shall arise out of the earth. Now, these four kings are reminiscent of the four parts of the statue, right? So it's kind of like telling you the same thing in a different format with these beasts, and these beasts come into play again with the beasts in Ezekiel and in Revelation. But the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever and forever and ever. See what I mean? That's what's the fret about it if the kingdom's going to be given to us. Then, here we go. I would know the truth of the fourth beast. The fourth beast is the final beast. The fourth beast is the iron mixed with clay, right? The later day beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceedingly dreadful, whose teeth were of iron and his nails of brass, which devoured, break in pieces, and stampede the residue with his feet. And the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes, and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. And I beheld that same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them. So we got a beast that's overtaking a horn that made war with the saints. And this happened when? Until the Ancient of Days came and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High. And the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. So you see, the persecution of the saints until the Ancient of Days came, which is the model of Christ, which is the model of Paul, which is the model of Revelation. Persecution until the coming of the Lord. And we are gathered together with him. Because the beast, the man of lawlessness, is hunting us down. So we read that little horn. Horn made war with the saints, the 10 horns. And then we go to Daniel chapter 9. Now before we go to Daniel chapter 9, should I jump to Matthew 24? Nah, I'll finish Daniel. That way I chop the videos up by books, right? All right, so let's go to Daniel chapter 9. Daniel chapter 9 is like ground zero when it comes to the latter days because it's more clearer than chapter 7. You know, some parts of Daniel, especially chapter 8, you're like, what's going on here? All right, but chapter 9, 26 to 27. You're going to see it saying the same thing we just said in chapter 7, but in a different angle, in a different way, with more clarity. It's in complete agreement. Daniel receives a vision, and here comes the clarification. Here comes the interpretation. 70 weeks. We looked at that in the first video, the intro, as far as the 70 weeks from the order to rebuild the temple to the coming of the Messiah the Prince, and then the last week what we're focusing on in this video series. So 70 weeks are determined upon thy people. It's like, this is it. You know, my back hurt. You know, it's almost lunchtime. This is the full program right here. This is it right here. Nothing else to look forward to. We're going to call this up. We're going to wrap it up because that kingdom come, it's coming, and we're going to set it up. So you got 70 weeks. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city. I got to throw in here. Realize how Israel's the focus, Jerusalem's the focus, and then as you come to see later on, the temple is the focus. Now us, you know, out here in the USA or wherever you are in South Africa or Haiti or, you know, down in Ecuador, you know, us Gentiles, we're grafted into this whole program. We're grafted into what the Lord's been cooking up as far as his sovereignty and his plan for the world and redemption of mankind. We're grafted into the covenants, that is. But we've always been a part of the plan because we all, including Israel, goes back to Adam, the seed of man. So 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city to finish the transgression, and to make an end of sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. So you see how all of that is said in one breath? But us in 2024, looking back, we understand, okay, so there's time gaps between some of these events. The end of sins, that hasn't happened yet. But reconciliation for iniquity has, which is through the cross. Everlasting righteousness haven't happened yet, which is going to come into play right here. New heaven, new earth. That's everlasting righteousness. Because it can't be here because there's a rebellion. It can't even be here because there's people that's dying at 100 years old. And even that is too early because the scripture talks about how someone's going to say they must have sinned or got caught up in iniquity. All right. And to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. So notice how the vision is being sealed up. It's like when Paul talks about in 1 Corinthians, though I prophesy and have no love, it is nothing. And he goes on to say how if there's prophecies, you know, they shall be fulfilled, and on, but love never fails. Like, love is ongoing, but prophecies is going to come to pass to where, okay, it was prophesied, it happened, and okay, that's that chapter of prophecies. We're done with that. What else we got? We got love, because it never ends, it never fails. So that's what he's referring to in terms of seal up the vision and prophecy. But there is a sealing up of the vision in chapter 12 of Daniel, where he is told to seal up the vision. But in the book of Revelation, that vision is being revealed. It's being unveiled. What was sealed is being unveiled because the time is near. All right, verse 25. Know, therefore, understand that from the going forth of the command to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 70 weeks. Okay, so I had closed it, but you know what? I think I'm going to open it up just for reference sake. Oh, yeah, slides. Bam. Just for we have that the layout in front of us. Here we go. 70 weeks. This is it. From here all the way to here. To Jesus. Jesus came back right here. Well, he's coming back. The second coming right here. All of this is 70 weeks. All right. As far as the order to rebuild the kingdom, or rather to rebuild the temple, that's in right here. I'm sorry about the movie, and you can see it. It's in Ezra 7:11 to 26 and 9:22. This is where it is recorded that Artaxerxes gave the edict to rebuild the temple. So from there, all the way to the coming of the Messiah, the Prince, was 69 weeks or 483 years, which we covered in the previous video. So, period leading up to the coming of the Messiah, the Prince, is the 2300 days. And as you get into Daniel, days matter. I believe this is based off of 360 days a year calendar. So this is the time frame, 70 weeks, right? Let's see. Okay. So going back to, there we go. So 70 weeks are determined right here. Shall be 7 weeks and 3 scores and 2 weeks. All right, all these weeks are kind of. Let's hop over to the NLT. $9.25. All right, now listen and understand. 7 sets of 7 plus 62 sets of 7 will pass from the time the command is given to rebuild Jerusalem until a ruler, the anointed one, comes. Jerusalem will be rebuilt with streets and strong defenses, despite the perilous times. Now Daniel's receiving this vision while he's in Babylon, and the Israelites are captives in Babylon and Israel, and Jerusalem and the holy city has been destroyed. After this period of 62 sets of 7, the anointed one will be killed. So you see how the scripture prophesies that the anointed one will be killed. It's in the scriptures that the anointed one will be killed, which is baffling why the Jews did not, or even today, the Jews do not accept Jesus Christ, the one who was killed, as their Messiah. Although some believe today, Jews believe today, some, that the Messiah will be killed, though they still reject Christ. Now realize how they're being set up for the great deception, because the little horn in Daniel, the Antichrist, he's going to be wounded with a mortal wound, in which he'll be killed. And then he's going to come to life 3 days later. So how about that for the great deception? And they're all going to follow this guy, although they rejected the actual anointed one. And even Jesus said in the book of John, I come in my Father's name, but you don't accept me, but another will come in his own name, and you will accept him. Others have done that, like Bar Kokhba, I think first century, and other false Christs throughout the years. And just as Jesus said would be in Matthew 24, and this man of lawlessness will be the ultimate false Christ. But let's go back to the verse here. The end will come with a flood, and war and miseries are decreed from that time to the very end. The ruler will make a treaty with the people for a period of 1 set of 7. But after half this time, he will put an end to the sacrifices and offerings. And as a climax to all his terrible deeds, he will set up a sacrilegious object that causes desecration or desolation. Now, until the fate decreed for this defiler is finally poured out on him. Poured out. That should make you think of the bowls. The bowls in the 7 bowls of Revelation that will be poured out on the kingdom of the Antichrist. Now, it appears to me that the first thing he does is he stops the sacrifices, right? He stops the sacrifices, and then he puts up, it says, the climax of all his deeds. is to put up a sacrilegious object, also known as the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel, which Jesus references. So we have the abomination of desolation, we have the last week, we have 7 years, we have halfway through the sacrifice. Um, he stops the sacrifices, and the culmination of it will be setting up the abomination of desolation. So really, stop sacrifices should go here at the 3.5 years, and then the abomination of desolation comes along after that's done. All right, so now let's go to 11:36 to 45. 36 to 45, the king will do as he pleases, exalting himself and claiming to be greater than every god, even blaspheming the God of gods. He will succeed, but only until the time of wrath is completed. The time of wrath, well, we should know, is the wrath we have not been appointed to, the wrath, the bowl that the Lord will pour on the kingdom of the Antichrist. For what has been determined will surely take place. He will have no respect for the gods of his ancestors. You know, interesting, I was watching a documentary the other day about World War II, and Hitler was the same way. Although he was raised Christian or Catholic, he disregarded all gods and he made himself God. And he was the Führer, and he was sang to, and the hymns were made to him. The songs were made to him, and Mein Kampf was the reading, and Bibles were banned and burned. And so Hitler came in the character of Antichrist. He's a very interesting study to have an idea of how the Antichrist will be, except he will be Hitler on steroids. So he'll have no respect for the gods of his ancestors, or for the God loved by women. I don't know who God that is. Maybe that's Zeus. Or for any other god. For he will boast that he is greater than them all. Instead of these, he will worship the god of fortresses, or some translation says the god of war. A god his ancestors never knew, and lavish on him gold, silver, precious stones, and expensive gifts. So he's going to be a bling bling type of fella. He's going to be a lover of things, a lover of money, a lover of possessions. He's going to be a warlord, a military tactician. And he's going to claim that this foreign god, the god that no one's ever even known of, is the guy that helped him. He will attack the strong fortresses. He will honor those who submit to him, appoint them to positions of authority, and dividing the land among them as their reward. You see how people are going to heed to this guy? They're going to yield to this guy. Kind of like Japan and Mussolini. Who was Mussolini with? I think that was Italy, right? How they rolled with Hitler, right? Because they get to enjoy the spoils of war. So shall be those who roll with the kingdom of Antichrist. Now, he's going to have opposition. Then at the time of the end, the king of the south is going to attack the king of the north. The king of the north will storm out with chariots, charioteers, and a vast navy. So, the time of the end. Remember, we are trying to pinpoint the rapture. Let's go ahead and read this entire chapter. Now, at the time, Michael, the archangel who stands guard over your nation, will arise. Then there will be a time of anguish greater than any since the nations first came into existence. So, you see here, talking about this conquering king and not acknowledging previous gods and god of fortresses. That's why I have all that stuff here before the treaty is even signed. Wars and rumors of wars, right? And then, because it goes on to say there'll be a time of distress, which is what Jesus talks about. I don't have it here, but Jesus says that it's going to be sorrows and anguish such as the world have never known, particularly for the Jewish people. So that comes about after this fellow goes conquering and to conquer. So there'll be a time of anguish greater than any since nations first came into existence. It's gonna get wild. But at that time, every one of your people, we're talking about Jews, Israelites, whose name is written in the book of life, will be rescued. Many of those whose bodies lie dead and buried will rise up. There we go. There we talking about the resurrection. Jesus Christ, the resurrection of life. Some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting disgrace. So this is a resurrection to judgment, not a resurrection as far as the rapture. But with that being said, Daniel does not separate between the first and the second resurrection. In the book of Revelation, it is written, "Blessed is he who takes part in the first resurrection." So where it says here in Daniel, many of those whose bodies lie dead and buried will rise up, some to everlasting life and some to shame. These two events, or rather, we learn through progressive revelation in the book of Revelation that these are two different events as far as the resurrection of the righteous, which is the harpazo, the gathering with the Lord. Those who sleep and those who remain will be forever with the Lord, rule for 1,000 years. And then those who did wickedness, yeah, they're resurrected later. That's the second resurrection. And you don't want to be a part of that one. All right, so verse 3, those who are wise will shine as bright as the sky, and those who lead many to righteousness will shine like the stars forever. So I think that's literally going to happen. God is light, and his children will be children of light, and light will literally exude out of them. They will shine like the stars in the sky forever and ever. But you, Daniel, keep the prophecy a secret. You see, seal it up. But the book of Revelation, reveal it, unveil it. But here, seal up the book until the time of the end, when many will rush here and there, and knowledge will increase. Then Daniel looked and saw two others standing on the opposite bank of the rivers. One of them asked the man dressed in linen, who was now standing above the river, "How long will it be until these shocking events take over?" Shocking events. So yeah, whenever you think of that, I like to try to get closer to like, okay, how did describe these? What were like previous terms that was used? What shall be the outcome of these events is how this one reads it. Isn't it interesting that like we always want to know? Like in the book of Acts, when the disciples were walking with Christ, they were like, "Is it now that you're going to restore the kingdom to Israel?" And Jesus was like, "It's not for you to know the time or the seasons." Verse 8, I heard, but I did not understand. Then I said, "Oh, my Lord, what shall be the outcome of these things?" He said, "Go your way, Daniel, for the words are shut up and sealed up until the time of the end." The Lord never gives, although this is a messenger, but the Lord never gives a date. Some things he gives a time frame. But as far as when this is going to go down, he doesn't give it. He's evasive with this knowledge. Many shall purify themselves and make themselves white and be refined, but the wicked shall act wickedly. And none of the wicked shall understand, but those who are wise shall understand, which is why it's important to read the scriptures, understand Bible prophecy, understand how Bible prophecy works. That way, should you find yourself in these latter days, that you have wisdom and understanding in the times that you find, or you may find yourself, because those who are wise shall understand. Those who are wise shall understand that we are living in the last days. The final hour has been going on for the last 2,000 years since Jesus rose from the dead, and we're just waiting our part to participate in this resurrection. For Jesus is the first fruits of the resurrection, and our time is yet to come. And from that time, verse 11, that the regular burnt offering is taken away, and the abomination that makes desolate is set up, there shall be 1,290 days. So we have a time frame given here when the sacrifice is taken away at the 3.5 year mark. You got 1,290 days. I believe that's 3.5 years. Blessed is he who waits and arrives at the 1,335 days. Well, look at here. Let me go ahead and bring up my handy dandy calculator. So we got 1,290 and 1,335. 1,290, let's say it's 360 days. That's 3.5 years. Even if 1,290, 365 days a year, still 3.5 years. So now we got 1,335. 1,335, huh? 1,290 minus 1,335. That's 45 days. There's a 45-day overtime from the 7-year treaty. So at the 3.5 year mark, 3.5 years, that's what's going to make desolate. The abomination that causes desolation, right? But at the 1,335 mark, blessed is he who waits and arrives to that day. I propose to you, that's when the Lord's going to come back. Or rather, that's when the Lord is going to rescue his elect. His elect as it relates to those names who are written in the book of life concerning Daniel's people. But go your way until the end, and you shall rest and shall stand in your allotted place at the end of days. All right, so that is Daniel's jet tour. Our next one we're going to be exploring is Matthew. And now that we have Daniel downloaded in our mind, we covered the 10 toes, the beast, the little horn, the 7-year treaty that starts here. We know that those who endure until the 1,335 days, blessed is that individual, which I think is relating to Daniel's people, the Jews, which to me is not necessarily the point in which the Lord returns and raptures the church and save Israel. I think those are going to be two different incidents, because as we get through Revelation, Israel is being preserved through the wrath that the Lord is pouring out on the kingdom of Antichrist and the sealing of the 144,000 when the 7th seal is broken, which introduces the wrath of God, which the saints are gone by then, but after the Antichrist is revealed. All right, so that's Daniel. Catch me in Matthew 24, where we absorb Daniel into what's going on here. I'm out.